Okay. As you all know, we are here to talk about the City of Minneapolis's 4D Affordable Housing Incentive Program tonight. This was an idea that we on the Whittier Alliance team had to kind of bring neighborhoods together and bring city staff together to create an opportunity for landlords or even perhaps renters who think their landlords might be interested in this program to kind of learn a little bit more about the ins and outs of the program, who qualifies, and sort of the process by which you can participate and become eligible for the benefits that it provides. So the idea is that we'll be able to then also use this recording to share with folks moving forward. If there are any, future program changes that, um, require the content of the presentation to change, we could perhaps do another one and push that out again as well. We did an in-person workshop in the winter of 2019 around the same time with city staff that were employed on this program at the time, and landlords let us know that it was valuable and that they would like to participate in something like that again. So that's kind of where this started, and of course there are many neighborhoods in the area that have properties and units that could become eligible for this program, and so we wanted to open it up beyond Whittier. Please do feel free to share this if you find the information useful with anyone in Minneapolis that might be interested in it. So from there, I'll just overview briefly what we're going to chat about tonight, and then we will get going and start off with some introductions so we can get a sense of who's in the room. We will then pass it over to city staff to talk about the program details and kind of how you can remain in compliance with the program, what the reporting process looks like. We also have a landlord on the call tonight. Eric Jensen is going to share a bit about his experience being a participant in the program, which I think will be valuable to hear. And then we'll have some time at the end for people just to ask general questions. If it ends up being something where you have a very specific question that might take a little bit more time to dig into with city staff, we will then, be able to get you connected with them for a follow-up conversation one-on-one with you. So that's kind of what we're going to cover tonight. And with that, I'll open up some introductions. Would love to know your name, your pronouns, if you'd like to share, the number of units you own in Minneapolis, or if you don't own any units, kind of what brought you to the workshop tonight. And then similarly, what you're kind of hoping to learn or what you're hoping to gain tonight so that we can kind of keep that in mind as we go. I will get us started. My name is Kaylee Brown. I'm the Executive Director of the Whittier Alliance Neighborhood Organization. I've been with the organization a little over 6 years. I use she, her pronouns. I also own one unit in Minneapolis, but it is not eligible for the program. It's just a unit in a larger condominium building. And yeah, I'm excited to learn what questions you all have so that we can get information out to you that's valuable after this as well. I'm going to pass it to David.
Yes.
I'm going to share my screen or stop sharing so we can see each other as well.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Maggie, for putting this together. I think it's been timely in terms of when we are rolling out the 4D program, which we opened the application portal on Monday, this past Monday, but equally to be able to talk about some of the legislative changes that are being introduced for the 4D program. Once again, my name is David Mukunza. I'm the program lead for Cities Affordable Housing programs. That's the Naturally Occurring Affordable Housing Preservation Fund, and equally the 4D program, and a Small Medium Multi-Family Preservation Fund, which is a subset of Naturally Occurring Affordable Housing. And lastly, I'm also responsible for the ordinance called the advance notice for landlords who are looking to sell their properties. And if there is any interest in that, I can also delve into some of the programs that I'm responsible for. I have been with the city for 4 months, and I love the fact that we are leading on a program that is impactful and equally sustaining housing and preventing displacement within the city of Minneapolis. My pronouns are he, him, and I suppose what I'm looking for is participation. And assuming that their content is probably going to be overwhelming, we do have a generic email. And towards the tail end of this presentation, I will provide our generic email address for any further questions some of the participants may want to ask us. It is a generic email box that is checked on a regular basis. But thank you so much for this invite, Kaylee and Maggie, and everyone else who put this together. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I will pass it to Ibtisa.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ibtisa Brown, and I'm a compliance analyst with the City of Minneapolis. I oversee the compliance for the 4D program, and I'll be chatting about all things compliance for 4D in just a little bit. Nice to see you all.
Maggie, pass it back to Whittier team for a moment.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie. I'm Whittier Alliance's engagement coordinator. I don't own any properties, but love, I work with along, oh my gosh, I work with along some of the tenants to find housing and some other, and just like mediate between them and their landlord to maintain their housing. I'll pass it on to Sarah from Lyndale.
Thanks, Maggie. Sarah Linus Robinson. I am the Director of Projects with the Lyndale Neighborhood Association. I've been with them for 3 years. Lyndale owns one rental unit above our offices in Lyndale. And in the neighborhood, we have more small buildings than large. And so we troubleshoot more on a one-on-one basis with property owners about opportunities that they might have with programs like this. Pass it to Hannah.
Hello, my name is Hannah. I use any pronouns. I am the tenant organizer for Phillips West neighborhood area. I will pass it to, oh goodness, I'm sorry, I don't know who hasn't gone yet. David?
Let's go to Eric.
Oh, sure. My name is Eric Jensen, he, him, and I am a landlord in the 4D program. So here to see what updates there are and share a bit of my experience being part of it.
Thanks, Eric. Let's go to Jordan.
Hello, Jordan Peacock. I'm the president of the Lowry Hill East Neighborhood Association. I've been on the board since 2020, and I live and own in a house in the Wedge neighborhood since 2018. And we have a whole bunch of landlords that we are engaging with that not all of them could come to this, but we have a lot of eligible properties, and we are excited to kind of continue having these conversations.
Thanks, Jordan. Let's go to Shaf. Did I pronounce that correct?
Yep, all good. My name is Shaf. I own property in Whittier Alliance, the Whittier area. I got 4 units here. I've been here for a couple of years. I actually tried to work with low income, some of the programs before. It did not end well. We got about 8 to 10-ish previously homeless people that came here, had a bad experience. And I've been actually rehabbing 2 of my units with an insurance claim. That was lovely, but it's now complete. So anybody who works with programs is able to help with the housing. Anybody that needs housing, now would be the time. I actually was just gonna apply for Section 8 today. So if there's any programs I'm not familiar with, feel free to reach out. If you guys don't mind, I don't mind leaving my number here or something. And then when I have to run out in about 10 minutes, feel free to reach out, text me, and then we'll go from there. Thank you, guys. And let's hit Michael, please. Pass it on, Mike. Bye-bye.
Hello, I'm Mike McInerney, interested property owner, own a rental duplex in the Tangletown neighborhood and own and occupy a duplex in the Kingfield neighborhood. So just want to find out more about this program.
Excellent. That's what we're doing tonight. So we're glad you're here. Let's pass it to Eric Turin.
Hey everyone, sorry about that. I'm with North Park Ventures out of Chicago. We have a portfolio of 340 units in Whittier and Lowry Park, and curious to understand a little bit more about this 4D program.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. David.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, we got another David. David Scheffler.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, hi, Dave. He, him. Let's see. I own a duplex in the Whittier neighborhood since 1982, and I'm just kind of curious about this program. I currently rent with people that qualify for it. That's what their income is today, and I know they're 2-bedroom units, and they're below the $1,300 or whatever it was that you had for the units.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. Okay, let's get going here. I'm going to reshare my screen, just making sure we didn't miss anybody, right? We got everybody? All right, take it away, David M.
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity. We are going to talk about the 4D affordable housing incentive. Can we go to the next slide? And before I delve into the overview of this program, I wanted to point out once again that this event is timely in the sense that we are accepting applications. You will see a slide towards the end. The application window is open from Monday the 13th all through to January the 11th at 5 p.m. And we will be able to share some more details about this. Equally, the other reason for having this meeting right now is because there are some legislative changes that are going to impact on how much tax reductions potentially property owner is able to benefit out of this. So just a bit of history, this program was created back in 2018. It was created back in 2018 to assist naturally occurring affordable housing. Naturally occurring affordable housing is referred to NOAH. Some of you may hear the words NOAH being bandied around. And that typically means properties that do not have any subsidies and with rents that are lower than current market rents. They're typically properties that are quite old, dilapidated to an extent. Hence the reason this program is there to do so. It is a tool that the city is using to continue in its pursuit of sustaining affordability housing, because I'm sure you are all aware there is an acute shortage of affordable housing in line with current market conditions. Rental properties are at risk of gentrification. So the current program as it stands, a property owner that is renting properties will be able to enjoy property tax savings, reductions, and also get energy efficiency assistance. If they agree, the threshold is a minimum of 20% of those rental units at 60% area median income, AMI. As you all know, AMI is set by a Department of HUD on a yearly basis. Owners of market rate multifamily properties like apartments are equally eligible on condition of meeting the criteria that I mentioned in the third bullet point. Next slide, please. So some of the benefits that a property owner would be able to enjoy is approximately 40% reduction in property taxes on condition that they're able to enter into a 10-year commitment with the city, and they will need to sign a declaration of restrictive covenants. More on that. Once again, the minimum threshold is 20% of those units at 60% AMI. So if hypothetically you have a 100-unit building, if you commit 20% of those units, then your resultant tax reduction will be approximately 8%. You're not committed to just doing 20%. We do see some landlords that do 100%, and consequently, they're able to enjoy their 40% in full. If you're a new property owner, you would be able to get $100 per affordable unit. That is capped at $1,000. The payment to the state for the low income rental classification is done by the city, and they're the ones that classify the property as 4D. Typically, an apartment will either be a 4A or 4B, 4A being the 4+ units and 4B being 2 to 3 units respectively. Priority is given to properties that require energy efficiency. When I talk about energy efficiency, we are talking about insulation for the walls. We know that's one of the biggest net heat losses, and also roof and boiler replacement. You will be able to see a slide where one of the property owners was able to enjoy approximately 90% savings on installing a new boiler. Next slide, please. So the eligibility guidelines is, I had stated before, it's at least 20% of those rental units at 60% AMI. Tier 1, we do look at Tier 1 or Tier 2 rental licenses to ensure that there are no rental housing revocations or outstanding housing orders. And equally, buildings can include owner occupants. We have seen fourplexes where the owner is recently, the owner was proposing to occupy one of the units. They would still be eligible to enjoy the 4D tax incentive. Next slide, please. So I talked about the 10-year declaration of restrictive covenants. And this 10-year declaration is, once your property has been qualified, is eligible for 4D, and you have committed a minimum of 20 units, you're not obligated to commit. You are obligated to commit at least 20% of the units at 60% AMI. The declaration of restrictive covenants that is entered between the property owner and the city is for 10 years, as I mentioned. Rent increases are capped at 6% on an annual basis, in keeping with income restrictions as set out on a yearly basis by HUD. If you opt to sell the property during that 10-year period, those restrictive covenants will run with the property. You are not able to extinguish those restrictive covenants simply because you are enjoying a tax benefit. There is also the energy efficiency that I spoke about. But by and large, this program is geared towards, as a tool to, when I mentioned in the first slide, of sustaining affordability housing, but equally preventing displacement. Next slide, please. So this is a typical example of some of the tax savings that you would be able to enjoy. In this hypothetical example, they've taken a 30-unit building with 50,000 nominal property tax bill. That is without them committing to the 4D. So per unit, that equates to about 1,667 per non-4D unit. If a property owner opts to do some of the units, you can see that this equates for 20%. This equates to about 439 per unit savings. The 20% unit equates to 6 units. This is bullet point, I believe, 5. And this would equate to annual savings of about just under 75,000 annually. If you opt to do 30% of those units, 30 of those units, enroll them at 100%, you would be eligible for tax saving coming to about almost 37,000 on an annual basis. So this kind of shows you the more units that a property owner would be able to commit, that translates into more tax savings. Next slide, please. So I did talk about this program has 2 components. It does have the property tax incentive that the city is using. It equally has the energy efficiency, where we kind of encourage property owners to improve the condition of their properties by embracing green cost share. But equally, it's in line with the city's commitment to climate change, carbon footprint reduction. That is not something that we are responsible for. This is something that you would have to reach out to the contacts that are listed here for them to be able to provide further details in terms of how they manage their program. As stated in the last bullet point, funds are on a first come, first serve basis. So it's imperative for property owners who are willing to do the 4D to really to do a little bit of research by reaching out to the energy advisor at mnc.org. Next slide, please. I spoke about some changes that are coming in place. These changes are effective from assessment year 2024. So the property owners will be able to benefit from this from 2025, assuming they enroll. The program is changing its name. It's changing its name from 4D program to 4D1 program. This is legislative changes. The classification rate that is currently in existence was a tired classification. It had 2 rates. So hypothetically, if I was to use a $500,000 property, the first 100,000 of that $500,000 value for property taxes will be rated at 0.75%. The remainder of that market value for property taxes would be 0.25. The new program is doing away with that tired classification rate and making it all uniform. So again, using the example of a property with a property value of $500,000, they would then be able to qualify for 0.25 uniform rate in 2024 assessment year. The tax savings currently are at 40%, but for those properties that are enrolling for the 2024 assessment year, the tax savings are going up at 80%, which is double. The existing program did not have any guidance. This is legislatively, it did not have any guidance in terms of how those tax savings are to be expended. However, the new law does provide requirements out of those savings where they need to be funneled. One of it is property maintenance. Another one is property security, improvements to the property, rent stabilization to the property, and also if there is a mortgage, perhaps the first mortgage lender may require the property owner to have some replacement reserves. So consequently, that tax savings is funneled out of those eligible uses. The legislative is requiring property owners to self-certify in relation to these tax savings that they have been used on an yearly basis. I appreciate this may be cumbersome, but equally by trying to streamline the program, it's come with some extra conditions and requirements. Next slide, please. So I did talk about the energy savings. This is a property in Humboldt Avenue South. The owner had applied for the Green Core share, and they were able to get 90% of the costs for installing a new boiler, water heater, plus insulating the exterior side walls. Obviously, that had a knock-on effect in terms of their recurring expenditure from a heating perspective. Next slide, please. So how do you apply? Next slide, please. So like I mentioned, it's timely. Our application window opened on Monday. It closes 5 p.m. January, which is a Thursday on the 11th, 2024. You would need to go to the 4D program website. And if you scroll down on the application, you will be able to see an application portal. We have had a few technical glitches, and perhaps this is something that will probably be a discussion, but I just wanted to point out we are aware of those technical glitches. It appears that access to that portal is dependent on the browser that you're using. I've equally had the same problem, and our IT are trying to resolve it. I understand it's something to do with a certificate. I'm not quite technically au fait in that side of things, but it's something that they're working on. But if you have either Microsoft Edge, it's working with me with Microsoft Edge. Some of my colleagues are using Chrome. They're able to access it. If you would need to, so in January, that's the deadline. March, you would have to sign a participation agreement. When you access, let me just go back to the second bullet point. So when you access that application portal, it will require you to provide, together with your application, a rent roll, because we want to be to validate that those incomes, current rent incomes, are within the income and rent limits. So you're required to do a rent roll. In March, you will be required to sign a participation agreement. At that point, a declaration will need to be signed. This is the 10-year declaration. We require wet signatures that is notarized in early March. And then the city will be able to compile all the applications. If there are issues, you may ask, how come we have quite a longer period? But it's equally to be able to just filter through the application to see whether there are any anomalies that perhaps we can approach the property owner and be able to address it in good time. In May to June, you would be able to receive the 4D incentive grants. As I mentioned, it's $100 per unit. This is capped at $1,000 per property, so that equates to just 10 units. We'll be able to get that. And then the next, you will be able to receive a notification from the state that your property does have the low income rental classification to be able to enjoy the tax break. So as an example, if you enroll if enrolling in 2023, then that classification will apply for 2024. Next slide, please. So currently, since we initiated this program back in 2018, currently to 2023, we have approximately just under 2,400 units enrolled in this program. I think that figure is higher. We haven't been able to tabulate currently, but I anticipate with obviously the new laws that are coming in place, regulations, we anticipate that there's probably going to be an uptick in applications. Of those almost 2,400 units, there are 285 different property owners. And the bulk of those are properties with an average size of about 5 units, and on average of 5 units. Sorry, and the bulk of those properties enrolled are within the 1 to 4 duplex, fourplex unit buildings. Next slide, please. So that is it. I did provide the 4D program page. I will also share the our generic email address. But once you have enrolled in this program, there's also the other part for which my colleague Ibtisam, which is much more important. She's more responsible for the compliance side of things. With that, I'll yield to Ibtisam, and then after that, depending on what Kaylee wants to do, we will field some questions and go from there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, David. So my name is Ibtisam Brown, and I'm the compliance analyst, as I mentioned. Could we go to the next slide, Kaylee? Thank you so much. Some topics we're going to be covering today are just general requirements of the program, income and rent limits, verification and forms, and then we'll do a quick little recap as well. Could we go to the next slide? Thank you. So as David mentioned, requirements include household incomes needing to be at or below 60% area median income at move-in. Rents also needing to be at 60% AMI rent limits. And rent increases are limited to 6% annually unless there's turnover. We also need to have any vacancies marketed affirmatively in accordance with the city's fair housing policy. And all adult applicants need to sign the 4D Government Data Practices Act form, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Can we go to the next slide? So as David mentioned, income limits are set by HUD every year. They typically come out in April or May. And just to give you an example of the current income limits, you can see on the screen, one person is $52,200, and it kind of goes up depending on household size. Next slide, please. Rent limits are also released by HUD every year at the same time the income limits are. And right now a studio is can be rented for a max of $1,305, one bedroom, $1,398, etc. If you have a property that has a larger bedroom size than this, or you're moving in a household that's larger than what was on the slide previously, you can find additional sizes on our website. I just wanted to give you a little snapshot here. Next slide, please. Rent increases are limited to 6% unless you have a turnover. So if you have someone move in, they move out, you can increase it above that 6%. But in no situation can you increase it above that 60% AMI rent limit. Next slide. So how do you verify that someone is in that 60% AMI bracket? The first thing you're going to do is have all the adult applicants sign the data practices form. That's essentially a release stating why you're collecting the information you're collecting and what it's going to be used for, and that it's the information they're providing you is correct. And you're going to look at the tenants or the applicants 1040. So you're looking at their tax return, which I know is a little strange for some folks, but that's part of why you want to start with that data practices form. So you're explaining to people why you're going to look at their tax return. In this program, you want to make sure you're counting the income of all the adult applicants. So get a 1040 for every adult applicant, unless, of course, someone is married and files a joint return. Next slide, please. This is just a screenshot of that Data Practices Act form. It's on our website if you want to download and see a larger version. I know this is pretty small, but it's a 3-page form. And on the second page, you're going to see the line for all the adults to sign. And then the third page is something we'll talk about in a little bit. Next slide, please. If an applicant does not have a 1040 on file, they can request a past transcript either online or by mail. You want to use the one from the most recent tax year available. And please do not send them to the city unless we request them. Just keep it on file. Next slide, please. This is just an example of a 2022 1040. The line where they put the adjusted gross income, which is what you're looking for, can kind of change depending on the year, but right now it's line 11. So you can see that right there. Next slide, please. And if you have an applicant who does not file taxes, you can still verify their income with third-party documents like pay stubs or award letters. You're going to use the gross amount before any deductions, and you're going to annualize that. If you have any questions on how to do that, you can always reach out to me. Next slide, please. If someone does not file taxes, you need to make sure they sign attachment 1 of that Data Practices Act form that we were looking at earlier. This is basically certifying that they are not required by law to file a federal income tax return. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that we do not need the tax returns. We don't need that GDPA form sent to us, but what we do need sent to us every year is the annual compliance form. I send reminders out to emails on file in December, and I attach the form that needs to be completed. This will also be on our website too. You want to make sure you're completing and submitting that form by January 31st of every year. This is an example of what it looks like. You can see kind of step one is just boilerplate information. You're filling out the property name, how many units you have enrolled, your information, or whoever's completing the report's information. Step two is just some boxes you're checking to make sure you're in compliance with the other parts of the program. Step three is filling out the unit information, bedroom size, rent amounts, etc. And if you didn't have anybody move in that year, that's kind of it. You just fill out the information, the rent information, and you send it to me. If you did have somebody new move in, you would mark yes in that little column where the red font is, and then you'd fill out step four, which is the household information. Say you had somebody move in July. You don't need to tell me in July that they moved in and what their income was and that they qualified. You just have that information saved. And then in December, when you're filling out this form, you can refer to that and submit that to me. So it's just a nice one and done. You don't need to tell me every time someone moves in, you just report it all at once. Next slide, please. The other really important part of this is the states form. So every year you have to complete the low income rental classification reapplication form. Minnesota Housing sends paper copies to owners that they have on file, but if you don't get it in the mail for whatever reason, you can also get it online. You're going to make sure that you complete and submit this to the state by March 31st of every year. This is really, really important. Sometimes folks think because they submitted a form to the city for 4D that they're all set, but they also need to complete the state's form. So please make sure you're submitting the city form by January 31st and the state's form by March 31st. Next slide, please. This is what it looks like. It might change based on the legislative changes that David mentioned, but this is what it looks like right now. It's a pretty straightforward form. The second page is just directions, but if you have any questions, you can always feel free to give me a call and I can assist if I can. Next slide, please. Just to reemphasize the deadlines, because they're really, really key. January 31st, you got to get that report to the city. March 31st, the reapplication form to the state. Whenever you have vacancies, you want to make sure you're posting them on Housing Link, which we'll chat about in a second. And then you want to make sure that adult applicants are signing the GDPA form at application time. Next slide, please. Housing Link is a website that a lot of folks use to find affordable housing. And a requirement of the program is that you post any vacancies on Housing Link. If you have any questions about how to post or create an account, you can always contact me. It's something I've used as a property manager in the past. It's pretty easy and pretty quick to post anything that you have. Next slide, please. We're almost done chatting about compliance, but I want to make sure we chat about non-compliance. Some examples of non-compliance include increasing the rent above 6% unless there's turnover. Obviously, having rents that are above the 60% rent limits would be a non-compliance issue. Moving in a household that is over income, rental license issues, you need to maintain a license that's tier 1 or tier 2, and failing to submit the compliance form by the deadline. Just some of the kind of top non-compliance issues. The penalties for non-compliance include not receiving the lurk reduction on whatever unit or units are not in compliance. And then if there's a second year or instance of non-compliance, a fee of $500 per non-compliant unit is assessed. I send non-compliance letters in the spring and I detail which unit's not in compliance, why it's not in compliance, what the consequences are, and how to resolve it, because we want to make sure that everyone is in compliance and we don't want to assess those fees. Next slide, please. I know we've thrown a lot of information at you and compliance can sometimes be a little overwhelming. So I just wanted to include this little recap flow chart here. I believe you'll have these slides as a PDF to refer to. So if you want to kind of just get a quick overview of how to move someone in and qualify them and make sure you're in compliance, you can refer to this slide. And I think that concludes everything that I had to share. I look forward to the Q&A with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibtisam and David. Gonna pass it over now to Eric Jensen, and Eric's gonna share a little bit about sort of what his experience has been like in the program, and just kind of give you a sense of kind of the perspective of somebody who is doing all of these compliance reporting and going through the process. So I'll pass it over to Eric.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Kaylee. I'll try to be brief and to the point. They sent me some questions to run through, so I'll make sure I hit all those. For context, yes, I've owned my duplex for about a decade. It was sort of this naturally occurring affordable housing. I did not know there were aspects to that beyond being below a certain market rent typically. So I was, feeling like I was doing my part. And then when I heard about in 2018 this 4D program starting up, I researched it for the first year and then applied in 2019, starting in 2020, and have been in it ever since, obviously. It worked. I just say, I guess the high level message would be that what David and Ibtisam mentioned is accurate. I've had the experience that they explained. It's worked out as advertised. Challenges in applying or for renewing the program, not significant. It is a little bit extra each year. The city's been solid in sending out a sort of reminder email with the form. There was 2 filings, one for that LRC and one for the city, and paying the fee. It's nice. It's not huge, but it's nice to get that fee sort of paid up front with that little mini grant. So the net cost is nothing to file it every year. It is pretty straightforward and simple. And I haven't had any real issues. Have I benefited from the energy improvements? Yes, I did. I did put solar on the duplex before joining the 4D program, and shucks darn, did I miss out. But I work in solar, so it's kind of it was in my I knew what I was doing and it worked out. It's been working out great. I did, however, before joining the program, do some pretty basic. I did an energy audit with CEE. I did some basic stuff like attic insulation, pipe insulation, and some weather stripping and weatherization. Once I was in the 4D program, the city, I did go through the process of having this deeper audit, identification of opportunities. The big one that came up, which was really nice to be able to include in the program, was the gravity furnaces that were in the basement, those old octopuses. They were able to be replaced. We went through, we got those out of there. We installed heat pumps outside. And this was 3 or 4 years ago now. So, you probably read about today in the news that heat pumps are the big thing. I can tell you they're working great. And that was before they had 3 more years of getting better. They did take, that was probably the biggest thing, is they did take a little bit of learning at the time. The vendors weren't quite great at programming them. I had to have them come back out and adjust things a couple times. We've troubleshot acting like what it does in the shoulder seasons when you're pulling heat from outside when it's 40 degrees out. But the utility bills dropped for the tenants. I've sort of kept in touch with them ongoing. They were using window air conditioners before this. In the summer, the electric bill dropped by like 30%. In the winter, those gravity furnaces were probably like 60 or 70% efficient. The HVAC system now, between the heat pump and the high efficiency furnace, has got to be in the upper 90s. So gas savings is just added. The tenants pay the utilities directly. It's just added savings for them. That's worked out great because it's a better unit, pair of units, more comfortable, more secure. So yeah, the biggest challenge was sort of that you know, it's a big project to tear out 2 furnaces, replace everything, and work with the nuance of a new system with new programmable thermostats that are very advanced technology. I did also get new heat pump water heaters. Those are fantastic. The furnaces and the water heaters have an app on my phone that tell me if something's up, which is an amazing thing as a landlord who lives nearby but not in the building, to know if there's a leak in the basement or something, or one of the furnaces is not acting like it should. I know before the tenant does. Have I had has your turnover rate increased or decreased since applying? I'm a small data set, so I can't really say. I have had both units turn over. It has been an interesting process on both sides. I will say that was maybe one of the interesting things is a tenant moved in. I thought I had explained the program very well, and am ensured that she was in compliance at the time. However, they thought that when they got a promotion at work and their income increased, that they had to move out. They chose this decision on their own without asking and proceeded to let me know that they weren't renewing, which was confusing for everybody and cleared up. But it does emphasize that this is a program that tenants don't know about and don't understand. And as landlords, I've had applicants tell me they're in compliance and then share with me the tax info, and it shows they're making much more than they can. So it is education on the front end. And that's probably been the trickiest thing, is just making sure that my listings are very clear and explicit, referencing and linking to the city's website about income requirements. It's gone relatively smoothly, but there have been these sort of hiccups. But other than that, turnovers have gone smoothly. I've posted that housing link website. I haven't actually gotten a tenant off of it. I think it takes a day or so for them to approve listings. And in that day in this market, my listings on Facebook and Craigslist and Zillow and the other places get me plenty of interest and showings and quick turnovers. So there's definitely a market out there of tenants that are in this program's requirements that are looking for these affordable units. And it has not been a problem of reducing or increasing difficulty of turnovers and handling them smoothly. Have I had to increase rents and why? Yes, but not really. So the property tax reduction was fantastic. I kept rent flat for a couple years. Some inherent pandemic stuff did increase operating expenses for the units. There was some water damage after a couple winters ago, some water intrusion that had to be addressed. That was a pretty big expense. However, I will say the 6% cap, I have not increased rents in the past 4 years more than 1.5% on any of the units. So that property tax decrease well offsets things to let me keep the rents flat or relatively flat. So yeah, I think my net, I don't have my spreadsheet in front of me, but over the past 4 years, I think my net increase on both units is in total less than 4%. So maybe we'll average 1% a year. What has been the benefit or challenges of receiving the tax incentives? I don't think anything. Maybe that I do have a mortgage on this property and it took the mortgage company like a little extra time to figure out that my property taxes went down and they needed to adjust how much I was paying each month. So that sort of was a delay. I think I reached out to them and let them know about the change so that they would like recalculate proactively. But that is a little, no, everything else was pretty smooth. Filling out the forms has been easy. When I did have a question with the tenant, I'll just conclude with, I reached out to the city. I don't think it was either David or Ibtisam who responded, but someone did help me with how do I address the fact that a tenant was recently unemployed and was working off of a unique income structure and met the requirements, but it was hard to document. So I would say that the city's been pretty solid in being quick to respond, which I know is not always easy for folks who have a lot on their plate. But yeah, I will stop there and be available for questions, but I can just say that I wish I could apply more properties to it, but my other units are condos. And I'm understanding that the city has yet to expand this program to those rental units. But I'd ask them to think about it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Eric. I've got just one quick follow-up question about the piece regarding like renter tenant education about the program. Could you imagine something that would have made or could make that a little bit easier for you? Like if the city were to, not to create more work for anybody, but just like I'm thinking like a one pager, kind of like an info sheet on this that is the audience is directed toward tenants. Is that something that could be helpful, or do you think the information was easy enough to sort of point to where it's at now?
I think it's easy enough, but that is a great idea. If there was like a PDF one pager that I literally linked to and said, "Are you interested in this unit? Read this." That said, "Hey, this is a 4D unit. What does that mean?" Yeah, that is literally the next step of me distilling the information and sharing the city's link. That would be probably the next best improvement to that information opportunity.
Cool. Yeah, because sometimes sometimes information reads differently to, the tenant versus, what a landlord is understanding about it. So cool. All right. Our next step here, we can just keep on going, is we are right on time as well. Love that. Just to open it up for questions. Does anybody that's on the call have questions either for city staff or maybe want to follow up on anything that Eric shared?
It looks like someone threw in, sorry, a quick question in the chat already. This is coming from David. He says he has a 2-bedroom unit, and does the total house income consist adding up both renters' incomes? David, feel free to rephrase to further explain or give a further example.
I think Ibtisam, I'll defer to Ibtisam. She did an awesome presentation on this, and I'll yield to her. But great question from my namesake right there. Thank you.
David, just to clarify, do you mean a 2-bedroom apartment unit, or are you talking about 2 separate bedrooms? I'm just want to make sure.
Yeah, two-bedroom unit.
A 2-bedroom unit.
So there are 2 renters that are not married, etc. And so as I saw some of those income numbers, like for a 2-bedroom, I think it was 56,000. So they each are at $15 an hour and making 30,000. So they wouldn't qualify. Do I understand that correctly?
So if they are both in the same apartment, you would need to add up all the income of the adults in that household. But the thing is, if you sign up for 4D and you have existing tenants and they maybe make, 100,000 a year or whatever, that doesn't impact whether or not you can qualify that unit for 4D. It's just moving forward. If they moved out, you would want to make sure you moved in someone who qualified.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking that the city of Minneapolis is $15 an hour. That's $60,000 a year. They wouldn't qualify if they got minimum Minneapolis payments. So the minimum income they don't meet, which I think is kind of odd.
Yeah. So as I said, though, if they stay put in that unit and you sign up for 4D, they wouldn't have to move out or anything. You could still have that unit as a 4D unit. Yeah, just want to make sure that that's clear.
Yeah, right. So it suggests that I would end up renting to one of them. Then they would meet it. And you know what would happen is they would be friends.
Well, they could still both live there, though.
Not as new renters. They can't.
Not as new renters. They would be over. It sounds like they'd be over income if they moved in, and but as it stands, they're good.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did have a follow-up.
So I just wanted to clarify, though, David, you're looking at their adjusted income.
Right, I understand.
So that's lower.
It would be lower, and that's a
Yeah.
good point. I didn't consider that when I gave the example of the $15 an hour. Because then they get this individual one-person deduction of, I don't know what the number is offhand, but
Yeah, and that's after taxes and everything. So, yeah.
right, I understand. So it'd be like $25 or $20 an hour, kind of equivalent, something like that.
David M., did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to reaffirm Eric's point from a landlord's perspective. I think for any landlord entering into the 4D, you are typically looking at the bottom line, which is the 4D program is able to do. It's able to reduce your bottom line, particularly given the current economic climate with increases due to inflation. But our website does have a ton of resources. I agree with the other caller. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, and I take on board that we appreciate the feedback, and as a process improvement, that's something that we can take back and see how we can be able to make the process much more easier and understandable for folks that are coming. It can be probably a flow chart. Like, the first question is, are you a landlord? Yes. It takes you to the next section. Do you have units? Are they within the income threshold? Yes, or no, it takes you to different routes. So those are some of the things that Ibtisam and myself, together with our team, we will be looking at to try and change a few things and make the process much more clearer for everyone. There was one additional point I wanted to make, and I appreciate we have limited time now, but I wanted to make a point that when I spoke about the 10-year affordability declaration of restrictive covenants, that is not set in stone. And I think Eric is probably here to affirm this. If you look at the Declaration of Restrictive Covenants and you look at the Section 8, which is the bottom section, and I believe we do have a copy of it on our website, it does talk about sometimes circumstances may change. And within that first 5 years, if, say, you decide you want, as a landlord, you decide you want to modify the Declaration of Restrictive Covenants, the city will require you to pay $2,000 for that modification to be made. But there is a condition, some caveats. You must be in compliance, as Ibtisam pointed out. Two, you have to ensure that that 20% of those units are at 60% AMI. I'm just saying this just to point out that there is some flexibility with the Declaration of Restrictive Covenants. There is a copy, and if anybody wants to have a look at it, or perhaps they're unable to find it, they can just shoot an email to us, and we will be able to provide a PDF of it, highlighting the requisite section. Once again, it's Section 8. Yep, thank you.
Thanks, David. Got a question in the chat from Michael. If new requirements mean money must be spent on the property, can we combine savings for larger improvements? Example, can a $5,000 credit be used for a $10,000 roof job over a 2-year period? I know this is part of the new program.
I think the new program calls upon the monies being expended on a yearly basis because there is the requirement to self-certify. My creative proposal to I can't remember who asked the question, Michael, would you perhaps consider a phased modification, refurbishment of the units, as opposed to trying to do those, so that you can enjoy the entire savings that are coming with the new statutory changes.
Then from Dave, Michael, did you have a follow-up? Sorry, I saw you on mute there.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you for that clarification. And I do know it is a new part of the program, but as we, look at improvements on our property going forward, some of the things that are coming up are going to be bigger ticket items because we've tried to keep on top of the smaller things. But again, if we decide to sign up for this program, we can certainly stage those things. So yeah, thank you very much for that clarification.
You're welcome.
Just a follow-up question on that for Michael. Is there a way they could like an addendum to that if it's like a very much needed repair that like requires that large sum of money, or is it like it has to be spent that year? Like, is it the whole balance, or is it like a certain amount? Just like, you know, you can get away with like spending a minimum of the savings, or does it have to be the full amount?
So that another great question. I think the law provides that those monies, property maintenance, on security, rent stabilization, topping up your replacement reserves if you have a mortgage, that has to be expended within 1 year. So because you have a 10-year, that's what I was suggesting to Michael, and I appreciate this may be difficult, but to be able to enjoy the full benefits, it'll be ideal. This is a question that was thrown up when we met some of our colleagues in other cities like City of St. Paul. The matter is still evolving, but there is some more clarity that is going to come out, and we do hope in due course to update our website to reflect that. I don't have more details because I wasn't the drafters of those new changes. We are just going with what has been proposed. And if you have had a chance to look at our website, you will see on the top part of the website, you will see that we do mention briefly the proposed changes. It might be that as we go forward, we may need to, not maybe, I think I'm certain that we may need to change our program guidelines, and that may require us to go to City Council for those changes to reflect the statutory changes. As I say, this is still evolving. I wish I had more details on this, but we're just providing information as we receive it. Yes, Sarah.
We'll go to Sarah and then we'll come back to the questions in the chat. Go ahead, Sarah.
All right, my sound was up. So I'm just thinking of the considerable savings for energy efficient things. Is it possible for an affordable housing development to sign up for the 4D program and receive those same incentives on these items?
That's a great question. I am aware that under our inclusionary zoning, there is a requirement where the developer is agreeing to commit to affordability of housing. There is that avenue to allow you to participate in the 4D. However, that said, the threshold, the requirements for you to participate in the 4D would be the same, whether it's an existing building or maybe a construction under the guise of the inclusionary zoning. There is some information on our website, and I'm more than happy to share this with you for you to be able to just delve deeper into that, Sarah.
Thank you.
Good question. There's some chatter in the chat about the solar benefits. And Eric is pointing out that you do not need to be in the 4D program to access the green cost share program for solar, but that there may be some other benefits or a higher rebate to doing so. Is there anything that either of you would like to add on sort of benefits of solar in 4D?
Sorry, I think the only thing that I will add, the whole essence of these new changes is essentially to improve the quality of the buildings. As much as it's not explicitly stated. Sorry, that's a tough word. That is the objective. Because most of these properties are somewhat dilapidated because of the restrictions in incomes. And equally because of those income restrictions, those are difficult to par with operational recurring expenditure. So this is more geared towards improving those properties, but equally sustaining the affordability. So that's what I would say on that. I don't know whether Ibtisam has something maybe more to add to that.
Nothing to add, you covered it perfectly. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Eric T in the chat has a question about boiler replacements. If you replace 2 boilers within the last 30 days, could those repairs classify as a repair or improvement under the program?
I think that's a great question again. I think that's something from a technicality. I think I would have to defer to our Green Cochet colleagues. The guy who our colleague is called David Isaac Evans, and he would be best to answer that question. It's not something that either Ibtisam or myself manage, and I don't want to provide misinformation here.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. If David, if you could, how would I be able to get in contact with you or Mr. Isaac after this meeting?
I'm going to put my email on the chat, and you can use that, and I'll be able to connect you with Isaac.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Other questions anybody has?
I got a quick question, or two maybe. Per my comment earlier, I have a few rental units that are condos in a condo building, multiple condo buildings. Is there any consideration by the city to start including those in the 4D program in the future, or reasons not to that it might be interesting to learn?
Sorry. My understanding that there are no exclusions. I think all rental properties are eligible on the proviso that they meet the eligibility requirements. I'm just looking at our website right now, and it states nearly all rental housing is eligible, including small 1 to 4 buildings, as well as large properties, single room occupancy, rooming houses, including group homes.
Oh, well, that's good to learn. I might have not caught that change because I know when I first applied, it wasn't included. So that's awesome to hear. I will have to dig into that.
Okay.
The other
I was
quick
under
question-
this. I was under
Oh,
the
sorry.
same assumption, Eric. So I
Okay.
think maybe the sticking point is that in a condominium, there's multiple owners of the building, and so there was. I don't know if it was previous wording of the program, but it did seem pretty clear that that wasn't something that we would be eligible. Eric and I own in the same building, so I know him through that, but it would be good for us to follow up on that too, because I had the same reading of it as you.
Yeah, we'll dig into this. That's awesome. Second follow-up question is, I am in the solar space, and I was wondering, since there is this requirement for 1 to 4 unit, or is it single and single family and duplex rentals need to go through a group purchase to participate in Minneapolis's green cost share program for solar. Is there any way the city could share or help, if we want to do a group purchase and organize one? Is there any way that the city could email the single family and duplex participants and let them know that we were doing something in that regard? Is that possible? Otherwise, it might be tricky to reach to even 5. It might be tricky to find.
Yeah, so I think that's a question that I would have to maybe do a little bit more research. I don't think there is a lot of caveats for it. but that's something that I will need to speak to Isaac Evans. But I would humbly request that you and Kaylee email me, and I'll be able to dig into this and provide some clarification in due course.
Sure, will do. Thank you for the help.
Thank you. Other questions? Right. Well, could we have Ibtisam or David, could you reiterate once more for folks that key application deadline date that people will want to keep in mind? And is it just minneapolismin.gov/4D? Is that
Correct.
the place they'll find that information? Okay.
Correct. And just to reiterate, that's a good point. Just to recap some key takeaways. Currently, it's at 40% property tax reduction. It does have the energy efficiency component. The new changes are effective from assessment year 2024. So in turn with that, the property owners will be able to enjoy those tax savings from 2025. And it's based on market values from next year. With that said, the application window is accessible from our website. If you do have any trouble, please feel free to reach out to me. Alternatively, we do have a generic email address that I had provided earlier. We are aware that there are some teething issues, but it appears that it's a browser issue. If you do have Edge and you do have Chrome, I would strongly encourage you to try both. And for me, I used Chrome. It couldn't work. My colleague used Chrome in the office today. It worked, but then when I used Edge, for me, it worked. So, but if you do have any issues, please reach out to us and we will be able to try and address those as soon as possible. Those are just the key takeaways. I want to point out that the tax savings are funneled towards property maintenance, property security, rent stabilization, and also topping up the replacement reserves in the event that any property owners have a mortgage to be able to mitigate against any inherent expenditure that may be unanticipated. With that said, I will reach out to my colleague once I receive my email from Eric and Kaylee. Just to finish off, I just want to thank both Kaylee and the organizers for putting this together. I think it was quite timely. And I think Ibtisam, I'm speaking here for Ibtisam as well. I think this is what we want to be doing because the jobs that we do is impactful to try and assist both the tenants and equally the property owners enhance their bottom line. So if out of this, it transpires that there is an interest, because I know this is being recorded, and as such, there is a need to meet during the application window, Ibtisam and I are more than happy to come again to answer any further questions that you may have, or perhaps other participants may be here. So thank you so much for listening to both myself and Ibtisam, and at the risk of making people fall asleep, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you both so much for putting this together with us. And thank you again to Eric for taking the time to share your experience. I think that was really helpful to hear. And appreciate everyone that joined us tonight. And yeah, let us know if there's anything we can do to assist. And we'll talk with you all soon. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.